Coming up today, emotions run high as South and North Koreans reunite for the first of 3 precious days together after decades apart. We'll hear some of the heartbreaking stories. The United States says it has no interest in seeking a peace treaty with North Korea. It says Pyongyang will only have security when it abandons its nuclear weapons. Plus, prepare the ballot sheets. FIFA confirms it will go to the polls as planned in February next year to elect a new president. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Wednesday, October 21st here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. And we start with the reunion event being held just north of the border. Families from South and North Korea have been seeing each other for the first time since the Korean War divided the country more than 60 years ago. It was an emotionally charged first day filled with tears of joy and sadness. Connie Kim starts us off.
80-year-old Lee Heung-ok has been waiting for this moment for decades. As soon as her brother Lee Heung-jong enters in a wheelchair, she instantly recognizes him and runs up to her long-lost brother. It's also a dream come true for Lee Heung-jong as he is seeing his grown daughter Lee Jung-suk for the first time. The last time he saw her, she was 2 years old. They don't dare waste a minute of the precious time they have together.
My dad is so good-looking.
The chance to hold on tightly to each other's hands is what these families have long been longing for every day and night. These heart-touching moments soon give way to tears for these siblings now in their 80s. Drafted by the military during the war, younger sister Nam Sun-ok thought her brother was dead.
I wish you were alive every day. The rest of our siblings passed away, and our younger brother couldn't make it today because he is ill.
The families from the South take time to reminisce on the past, sharing stories and looking at photographs as they try to make up for the more than 6 decades of lost time. These are just a few of the 389 South Koreans lucky enough to be chosen for this first round of family reunions that will extend over 3 days. On the second day of the reunions, families will have 3 meeting sessions, starting with closed-door meetings where the families will get some private time. That will be followed by a luncheon and a group meeting. In total, they will get to meet 6 times for a total of 12 hours, which is an extra hour from previous reunions as requested by South Korea. Even still, for many families, it's not enough time, especially because they won't know when or if they'll ever see each other again. Most of the remaining separated family members are in their 80s and 90s, which shows just how pressing it is for these meetings to be held on a regular basis. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
The United States has rebuffed North Korea's renewed demand for a peace treaty with Washington, saying that Pyongyang's denuclearization should come above anything else. At a hearing of the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee on Tuesday local time, Washington's chief envoy to the 6-party nuclear talks, Sung Kim, said the U.S. has no interest in holding discussions regarding a peace treaty with North Korea, reaffirming that their priority is on the North's denuclearization. The chief envoy did admit, however, that the U.S. is having a hard time getting Pyongyang to focus on giving up its nuclear program. Kim said the U.S. will use every possible means to make the North realize that it can't achieve the security and prosperity it wants while it pursues nuclear weapons. Now, in regards to Japan's new security legislation, the U.S. official made clear that Japan's military won't be able to operate on the Korean peninsula without Seoul's consent. He pointed out that the revised guideline states the importance of respecting the sovereignty of a third country. South Korea and Japan held a rare round of defense talks in Seoul on Tuesday. Japan's defense chief said his country would abide by international law when considering a possible troop deployment to the Korean peninsula if a war were to break out. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
South Korea's Defense Minister Han Min-koo and his Japanese counterpart Ken Nakatani met on Tuesday to discuss bilateral defense cooperation against North Korean threats and other matters of regional security.
Defense chiefs from Korea and Japan exchanged views on security issues, including policies regarding Japan's new security legislation that was passed in September.
Han reaffirmed the stance that Japan needs prior approval from Seoul before deploying any Japanese forces to the Korean peninsula. Nakatani agreed Tokyo would abide by international law, which requires prior consent or a request from the country in question to dispatch troops abroad. But experts say under international law, Japan does not have to gain Seoul's consent to send its troops to North Korea if war breaks out.
Korea believes Japan needs to gain prior consent from Seoul in case of war on the Korean peninsula, as North Korea is considered South Korean territory under the constitutional law. But under international law, North Korea is a separate country, so Japan doesn't need Seoul's consent to dispatch troops north of the border during wartime.
Experts say Seoul and Tokyo have been in tug-of-war for decades regarding the involvement of Japanese troops on the peninsula, and it's not likely to end, as many Koreans continue to stand against such a presence since the country suffered under Japan's colonial rule from 1910 to 1945. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Now, in domestic politics, President Park Geunhye will meet with the leaders of Korea's ruling and main opposition parties later this week. The presidential office of Cheongwadae says she will meet with the chairman and floor leaders of the ruling Saenuri Party and the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy on Thursday. The reintroduction of state-issued textbooks, history textbooks, is expected to top the agenda. President Park is also scheduled to address the National Assembly next Tuesday to explain the government's budget plan and policy goals for next year. She has addressed Parliament every year since taking office in 2013. FIFA has confirmed that its presidential election will happen as planned on February 26th next year. The World Football Organization's Twitter account said its executive committee had decided to hold the vote as scheduled in Zurich. This all came about because there had been some uncertainty as to whether the election would go ahead after President Sepp Blatter and UEFA President Michel Platini were slapped with provisional 90-day suspensions a couple of weeks ago. The deadline for nominations to stand in the presidential election is next Monday, October 26th. Chinese President Xi Jinping and his wife are getting the red carpet treatment in Britain. Addressing the Houses of Parliament on Tuesday, President Xi said he believes his state visit to Britain will lift ties between the two countries to new heights. He also described his country and Britain as increasingly interdependent. The Chinese leader and his wife, Peng Yuan, were formally welcomed by Queen Elizabeth II and the Duke of Edinburgh. They will stay as guests of the Queen at Buckingham Palace during their 4-day stay. President Xi is currently attending a state banquet at Buckingham Palace with the royal family and senior members of the British government, including Prime Minister David Cameron. UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon is calling for an end to the recent uptick in unrest between Israelis and Palestinians. The UN chief, who made an unscheduled visit to Jerusalem on Tuesday, said no society should live in fear. He said his visit was to encourage and support all efforts to lower tension and prevent the situation from spiraling out of control. Ban is scheduled to meet with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu separately to discuss ways to bring an end to the current wave of violence. The visit comes amid weeks-long unrest that has claimed the lives of 10 Israelis and at least 44 Palestinians. Now, as complaints about the emissions scandal surrounding Volkswagen continue to swell, Korean customers are also seeking legal action. One group plans to file a class action lawsuit in the United States this week. Kim Min-ji reports.
Legal battles are in the works. Korean owners of Volkswagen cars tied up in the emissions cheating scandal are planning to sue. So far, a total of 695 Korean people have initiated legal action through Patent Law, a Korean law firm representing Volkswagen customers. The law firm says it will partner with global law firm Quinn Emanuel to sue Volkswagen's German headquarters, as well as the company's U.S. division and a factory in Tennessee. The Korean customers in the case are seeking a refund for the purchase price, plus compensation for damages of $26,000 and up.
We've received applications for more than 4,000 people, so the number of plaintiffs is expected to rise. The class action involves the Passat, produced in the US, as well as models made in Germany. While we expect we'll have a high chance of winning, it's more about the compensation.
While the scandal continues to rattle the company, Volkswagen Korea says an additional 4,500 vehicles with the older and higher emissions prone Euro 5 engines will be subject to recall. Though a recall schedule hasn't been set, that brings a total to roughly 125,000 and involves 28 models. These cars are among models Volkswagen has admitted to having fitted with the defeat device to cheat U.S. emissions tests. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, the OECD has kicked off a ministerial-level meeting on science and technology in the city of Daejeon, a hub for the two fields here in Korea. And Korea is the first country, in fact, to host the meeting outside of France, the home of the OECD headquarters, and it's leading discussions on a 10-year policy roadmap. Oh Soo-young reports.
Korea is taking the lead at the OECD Ministerial Meeting for Science as the host country of the two-day event in the city of Daejeon. The event gathers roughly 270 officials and ministers from OECD member countries and international organizations, including the Association of Southeast Asian Nations.
우리가 당면한 범지구적 문제를 해결하기 위해서는 혁신적인 과학기술을 적극 활용해야 하고 글로벌 과학기술 협력을 강화해야 합니다.
The officials are discussing the 6 core goals of the OECD's Committee for Scientific and Technological Policy under the theme of creating our common future through science, technology and innovation. It is the first time in its 52-year history that the meeting is being held in a city other than Paris.
Holding the discussions will raise Korea's global status as a leading diplomat of science and technology. Korea will actively contribute to science and technological innovation strategies related to inclusive growth, with its successful experience providing an example for developing countries.
To promote inclusive and sustainable growth, Korea will introduce its Creative Economy Initiative as the best practice model for such efforts. The talks will produce a roadmap called the Daejeon Declaration on Wednesday. This will set the direction for global initiatives and policies in science and technology for the next 10 years. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News, Daejeon.
Now, ranking third in the world is something to celebrate these days for Korea's shipbuilding industry. It had a third quarter to forget, but a return to the industry's old glory days may be on the horizon. Shin Se-min reports.
Outpaced by their Chinese and Japanese rivals, Korean shipbuilders suffered big losses in the third quarter, casting a long shadow over the country that was once the global industry leader. According to data from UK-based Clarkson Research Services, Korean shipyards bagged new orders totaling 2.1 million compensated gross tons last month. That's far behind China's nearly 3.5 million CGTs and Japan's nearly 2.4 CGTs. The losses for Korea stem mainly from an oversupply, weak financing, and lower shipping rates. And on top of that, falling global crude oil prices prompted oil refineries to cut spending by delaying or canceling orders for offshore production facilities, including drill ships. But the newly elected Secretary-General of the International Maritime Organization believes Korea's sandwiched industry has the potential to overcome its difficulties. Speaking at this year's annual World Ocean Forum, he said Korea's shipbuilding industry could help solidify the country's position in the global maritime economy.
I believe, the Korean shipbuilding industry need to enhance their efforts for research and development in terms of technological development is the key to overcome competitiveness, to keep competitiveness over other rival shipbuilding industry and the nations.
He added that coordination among research centers and related ministries could help promote Korea's maritime industry in the long run. But things may not be as dark as they seem for the country's shipbuilders. Some experts point out Korea's Chinese competitors are losing steam due to enhanced global environmental regulations, as the majority of the vessels made in China still run on diesel engines, forcing an increasing number of China's potential clients to turn away. 신세민, Arirang News, Busan.
Well, that's all the news we have for you on this Wednesday morning here in Seoul. Thank you as always for tuning in, and we'll be back throughout the day with more newscasts. Goodbye.